On today's episode, Chad and I discuss entrepreneurial hubs, and they are everywhere. And you'll find them in tiny little towns as well as big cities. You'll find them supported by local government. You'll find them set up by private enterprise, cooperatives, right across the spectrum of how these things operate. It's fabulous. And Chad is on the road for months, aren't you, Chad?
I am, yeah, going about 10, 12 months.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And he gets to drive this amazingly beautiful car, which you will have to look at on Chad's website or on our social media, and you'll find it. Stay to the end, share the story, learn some things about entrepreneurs that maybe you didn't know. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Stories from the Red Couch, episode 59. I'm Robin Cook, and today I have Chad Renando on the couch with me. Hello, Chad.
Hey, Robin, how you doing?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Quite well, thank you.
Good. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You've had such a busy day, haven't you?
Yeah,
And
it's
so
good.
I'm feeling a bit privileged that I've managed to sneak you away.
Oh, it's an honor, thank you.
What are you doing on the coast?
This is actually day one, Robin. I'm doing a national tour of regions to find out who supports entrepreneurs. You know, from local governments, innovation hubs, co-working spaces, creative hubs, investment groups. All these people are around to help entrepreneurs. Who's doing it well? And how are they different between the different regions across Australia? I'll be visiting about 60 different locations over about 10 months.
That's quite a project, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So how did you come to decide to do that?
Well, there's a couple of starts to it. Most recently was I ran an innovation hub in Ipswich, a local government model called Firestation 101. So I did that.
I've heard of that, yes. Fabulous.
Yeah, so I did that for about 20 months. We had about 150 entrepreneurs come through. You know, they were raising some seed money and generating about a dozen employment opportunities and really helping the local community. But as I was doing that, I kept asking, well, what is the role of local government? You know, do they have to buy a hub? Do they just invest in existing ones? So I took a tour over to the US. I visited about 50 locations over there across 7 cities. I went to the typical, you know, San Francisco and Boulder, Colorado, Kansas City, Toronto, Seattle, Vancouver. Always asking the question, what is the role of local government? Came back to Australia, decided to do a PhD asking that question. You know, and in particular, what is the role of the Innovation Hub in building resilience, particularly in regional communities?
What did you find in America?
Really different as far as the socioeconomic structure.
Sure.
Over in the U.S., you know, you ask the question like, well, government can get out of our hub, they can get out of our business.
Yes.
Whereas in Australia, higher taxation means there's more public funds to go around, which means more money to then invest in a bit of an economic development portfolio, particularly in the new business economy.
Fabulous. I know that in about 1983, I think it was, John and I started Queensland's first photo library. And I remember thinking at the time that it was so hard to start with nothing, no capital, no investment, just us, and having to continue to put food on our table, pay our rent, and start up a business with no support. And I remember thinking at the time, if only there was something that we could access that would help us over this, you know, just in that startup phase, and then with some advice and so forth, we'd be right. We have that now, don't we?
That's right. And they're popping up all over Australia.
Yeah.
Obviously, the more the density in the metro areas, you have more of them.
Yes.
But pretty much across, you know, the regional areas, from split spaces in Mackay to the space up in Cairns, Canvas out in Toowoomba. You know, you have the Smart Hub up in Rocky. All over Queensland, all over Australia. Yeah, these innovation hubs, these spaces popping up to get those connections.
Are they largely driven by government, or are they businesses, or are they cooperatives? What's the structure there?
Yeah, it really is a mix, and that's what I'm on the road to find out. Like, what are the different models that work? Sometimes, like up in Rockhampton with the Smart Hub, or Ipswich with Firestation 101, or there's a new one popping up in Logan with the Kingston Butter Factory. You have local government saying we are going to invest in a hub to drive civic outcomes. And other ones, you have independent models like the Space up in Cairns or Split Spaces in Mackay or Canvas in Toowoomba.
And Fishburner is like that too?
So Fishburners is a not-for-profit with 2 locations in Sydney and up in Brisbane, but it is a little bit of a hybrid because they're also supported in the capital, which is a Brisbane City Council initiative.
Great, okay. And do you find that where something is coming down from the government, I mean, there's people often talk about groundswell or bottom up and top down, that kind of thing. Where do you see that balance arising?
Yeah, so I do have an opinion on this one.
Yes.
Obviously, as a researcher and doing a PhD, you try and put your opinion aside.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do see the role of government as facilitating. If they are going to participate in something like this, then they need to be really driving those economic development outcomes. You know, for example, you have an economic development portfolio that a local government should be driving for their community. Within that, you have the new business component of that. And so if they're going to be involved in an innovation hub, they need to drive the new business, new job growth, but only so much that it facilitates an outcome and then let the private market get in to help take over. So they're not subsidized competition with other actors in the ecosystem.
Because that really, I think sometimes that dampens down some entrepreneurial spirit if you create dependency. Yeah, is that something that happens?
You got to get the mix right.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's what I'm looking to find out is, and not only that, but if we're going to drive innovation, can we drive innovation for civic outcomes? I really am impressed with what's happening in Logan, where they're really investing in the Kingston Butter Factory to make it a center of excellence for civic innovation and civic outcomes, driving some of the community aspects of it when it opens next year.
Yeah. So with the work that you're doing then, and I'm involved in the old ambulance station in Nambour, is your work going to be something that we can access so that we can see what other organisations are doing? Or are we best just to jump in the car and do the tour ourselves?
Well, you can if you want. It's a lot of work and effort.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping to do is I do it so that others don't have to. I'm wanting to come up in the structure of my questions, which we talked about earlier today, is to create a set of principles. You know, if you're going to do a hub, if you're going to invest in this type of activity, here's some principles that would make it a success across all the models. You know, so that you can then say, well, what for a hub that focuses on creative outcomes, like the ambulance station, what works in other areas? Let's take a look at all creative spaces, creative entrepreneur-focused areas. And I love what's happening, what we shared about today. Really great example. How do we drive the entrepreneurial spirit within the specific creative sector? Who else in Australia is doing it? And how do we cross-compare and learn from that? One of the things I talked about at Firestation is it took us about 18 months really to find our pace. Other hubs opening up, I want them to do the same thing in 6. We have to get these lessons out there and learn faster.
And with the different hubs then, they will have different focuses, won't they? I mean, at the old ambulance station, we're pretty much around the creative industries, but there will be other different focuses for different hubs. Is that what you're finding? And
I would actually say that that's critical to survival for these hubs.
Is to identify what it is that you're focusing on.
You can no longer be a generalist and survive.
Sure.
You know, if you're everything for everyone, you do nothing really well.
Yeah.
And so if it's creative, if it's hardware, like I saw this morning with the Sunshine Coast Makerspace, fantastic location. You really have to say, this is the thing I'm good at, and be really good at that thing.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that we have absolutely come to that conclusion as well. But as you say, it can take this long, and you really want to condense it into that long because, you know, the market is agile and we need to be on top of what we're doing so people can come through and go out.
That's right.
In a success. And then do you find that for those other spaces, people are coming in, they're building their business, and then they're going off?
Yeah, well, that is the ideal. Sometimes the hubs themselves expand a little bit to help what we call a scale-up, a high-growth firm.
Yep.
Because one of the challenges is the business model for hubs quite often is a challenge. Because the people that come into there can't necessarily pay their rates in order to support the rent and the membership, which means you have to find revenue from other streams, whether it's from hosting events like you do at the old ambulance station, or corporate sponsorship, or investors coming in. So you really do need to find ways to be creative about being sustainable And if you're only focusing on early stage companies and not really taking advantage of the benefit when they can get older and more mature and can pay rent, well, it's a pretty hard business model. So quite often they do start scaling up to say, how do we support people when they go to the next level?
What sort of success stories have you come across so far? I mean, I know that you've just started out, but obviously you don't get to do a PhD without having some background in it. So,
well, look, like obviously I can speak at length about Firestation 101, where people came in, and you and I were just talking previously about the people when they get older, how do you get a job? Well, I had Kate from a company called Wiser, and she came in and said, Chad, I'm trying to find an idea for business. I know I want to start something. And then she started talking about her dad who was unemployed and really struggling to get back into work. And we started working this process. And so now Kate is in her second or third year of her business, creating a platform for the Wiser generation to find employment, entrepreneurship, and volunteering opportunities.
Oh, that's spectacular, because that's exactly what I've been thinking of as well. So I guess that's another thing that you can pull out of this, is a way of us all connecting into, if we've had that idea. And that's where you can scale, can't you? Because if she's in Ipswich, then that model could jump to the Sunshine Coast.
Just like that, by connecting with someone like you.
Yeah.
And so what we need is, we do need a hub of hubs. We need to connect people across. And for the people that are running the hubs, we need to build capability and capacity, because quite often you just get that person who's passionate and starts up in a remote community or a regional community and thinking, how do I do this thing?
Yeah.
When you have somebody maybe down south who's been doing it for another 2 or 3 years, and they can pass on those lessons and connect their members with these members up here.
Absolutely. So tell me about the Firestation 101. How did you start there?
So, I got tapped on the shoulder / applied for the role with local government. I have a background in everything from manufacturing. I told you before, I mentioned that there's 2 stories on how I got into this. One of them is starting Firestation 101 with the local government, where they brought me on as an employee to run it. But I actually started back as my first role out of the Navy with my family business. And we manufactured printed circuit boards up in Seattle, but we went bankrupt.
Yes.
And that started me thinking, like, what would you do with a whole bunch of people that no longer had a job, like 80 staff that had been working together for 20, 30 years? How do you build resilience in these communities for these people when we have such market disruptions? And so that was the top of my mind as I'm running Firestation 101 as a community manager there. So again, we had a lot of people coming through, everything from the local automotive company who came in, and now he has scooters that are getting ready to dot Australia, fixing windscreens for people. Where you don't need a brick and mortar place to fix them, but he can just do it on his scooters, in a bit of a franchise type model business. So just having people think a little bit differently.
Yeah. We've got a fellow in our local community, and I talked to him on the couch a few weeks ago, and he's 70. And and you can imagine, by the time you get to 70, you've done a lot of different things. He's such an interesting man. And he has started a little business where he repairs things. So Eric the Ready is his business.
I know about Eric the Ready. Yep, I've seen him.
Yeah. And what could he expect to get from a hub? What could he look for?
Well, everything from being able to help people that are in the hub do what they do. Quite often the question I ask, and an innovation hub isn't for everyone.
No.
We talk about this whole thing of a startup. A startup is not a small business.
Yeah.
And it's nothing.
Can you just explain what that is then? Because I mean, I really struggle sometimes, and I'm getting better but the word entrepreneur, and because I, lived through the 80s, and you may or may not know Australia or Queensland in the 80s, but we had this character called Christopher Skase, and he was one of our first entrepreneurs, and he shone like the sun, and then he exploded. And I feel like we have been tainted by examples like him. And so explain to me the difference then between an entrepreneur like that and what we say now.
Sure. So entrepreneur is just somebody who takes the risk themselves. They invest their own capital in order to get their own reward. So there's a bit of aspect as compared to like an employee who gets a salary and works for someone. And again, there's no judgment either way. I think we need to avoid a bit of the celebrity of one or the other.
Yes.
and then you have a small business versus a startup. And a startup is a small business, but it's a particular flavor of small business. And the way I differentiate, I ask 3 questions when people came into my hub. One is, do you have domain knowledge? Because you have to kind of know something about the networks. That you try and avoid the number of new. You know, if you have to learn a new craft and get new networks and all these new things, plus learn how to start a business, that's hard.
Okay.
So you need to have domain knowledge. 2, you got to have passion, because this isn't for the faint of heart. It's just hard. Like, you're tapping into your mortgage and you're waking up at 2 in the morning trying to think, oh, am I going to get the customers? Do they even want what I want? Yeah. But 3, and the one question that defines it is, who's your customer in Connecticut? Not that Connecticut is anything special, but it proves that you're using some technology in some way to scale your product more than just a service-based company, more than a coffee shop or an automotive company.
So that's the scalable or the global element.
What's your addressable market? How big can you get?
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody who's using technology in some way to scale their product, that differentiates in some way, that adds value that people want to buy.
Okay.
And the more new it is, and the more it adds value, the more innovative it can be.
All right. Where does that leave small business owners? Is there a place for them in hubs where they could learn something that would help them?
Yeah, there's a growing awareness of a need for a portfolio approach. So you have your survival-based businesses, where quite often people come out of unemployment or out of situations where maybe they can't find employment through traditional means. And so there is an aspect of that. And the nice thing about that, it teaches people how to adult in the business world. Can I P&L, and can I GST, and can I just run a business?
Yeah.
But once you start getting that under your belt, then you can start thinking, well, how do I do a business in different ways?
Yes.
And how do I maybe have a website? And if I do a website, can I sell things on it?
Yeah.
And if I sell things on the website, then can I maybe sell it differently than everybody else?
Sure, and that's where that difference is around.
That's right.
Coming in with your 3 knowledges. Do you know about domains, and do you know about,
That's right.
Okay, all right, well, that's interesting. Sorry, I know, it's the time of, we've just had rain, we've got lots of mosquitoes, they're everywhere.
I think it's great.
Well, it's certainly great that we've had some rain. It was just horribly dry. So with Firestation 101, then, you were employed by the council to run that. That's fabulous. So had that, because I think that's what we all, well, I can't generalise because you're doing a PhD and you're going to know these things. But that's one of the struggles, isn't it? To come together and have a hub. How is it run, and who supports the employment of the person who runs the space?
Yeah, it's one of the things I find quite often, especially with independent models that aren't backed by a university or government, which are the 2 main ones that are backed. Sometimes you have venture capital that throws it in as well, or corporates. You need to remove the hygiene factor. You need to remove the need for that person to think, A, how am I best supporting the entrepreneurs in my hub, and B, am I going to eat tonight?
Yeah.
Ideally, like, there's a bit of that that's kind of important. Like at Firestation, I was putting in 7 days a week, 80 hours a week, because I was getting a salary. I actually had to do more than everybody else. I felt. Just for integrity.
Absolutely, yeah, look, I'm with you. I understand that.
So, but ideally, there is somebody who then funds someone so they don't have to worry about, am I going to eat tonight? So they can just put all of their effort on growing, building, and scaling the people that are in that hub.
Yeah. So there's value for a council to put that effort into making sure that happens?
Or finding a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
So if they say, look, we'll put in half the salary, but then that person has to hustle and then find somebody to put in the other half, because a collaboration, a partnership, again, you want to avoid that dependency type model.
And that builds capacity.
That's right.
and financial resilience in it. Are there many hubs that have businesses that generate an income for the hub other than tenants paying rent? Is that something that well, so for instance, the old ambulance station, we've got our Ambo Media Makers, which is going to generate an income. That's a business of the old ambulance station. And we have the Black Box Theatre, which generates an income for the ambulance station.
Yeah, I think those are great. Where you have different, you need multiple revenue streams in there. To be able to get, as you say, from venue hire to service-based businesses, fee-for-service type models. Because it not only builds capacity and capability in the people in there, adds something to the community, creates employment, creates revenue, And also, if you get it big enough, you can create a center of excellence that draws people from the outside in, and then really that's what you want.
So where are you heading off to after here? So we're filming today and it's Monday, but we're not showing this until Sunday. So your time on the coast will be over by then?
It will be. So I'm going to visit one last makerspace on Saturday, and then I'm heading up to Rocky. So there's do a couple of meetings Monday, Tuesday, just seeing some of the hubs up there. The Smart Hub's doing some pretty good stuff, and checking out some of the Chamber of Commerce and what they're doing. And there's a 3-day conference I'll be participating in with Economic Development Australia. And then I've got a day gig up in Mackay. Then I got to hop down to Brizzy for a 3-day workshop. And then I'm going to start doing the loop, heading left into Ipswich, Toowoomba, Western Downs, Longreach, Isa, and then up north and back down again.
And so people can see this on your website, because I had a look, and you have got that beautiful car which is parked in my driveway.
Yeah.
Is that what you're taking on the road?
It is.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's good fun.
It's so beautiful.
It's just one big excuse to drive the car. I'm sorry, that's just, so everything we talked about, just go ahead and park that. It's just Chad wants to drive his car. So.
Yeah, a road trip.
That's right.
There's nothing nicer than a road trip.
Yeah.
And how long are you going to be away for?
So this stint, I'm going to do until mid-December.
Okay.
And then I'll do Queensland, wrap it up, write up the PhD, and then get additional support so I can then, because it's all self-funded, I'll go then head south into New South Wales, probably around end of Feb, early March, and then keep doing the loop until about July.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
And I love it because you will be, to see all of those hubs around the country and then pull all of that information together is going to be invaluable, because we are working hard. We do wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we are striving for the greater good, really. And any help that we can get in doing that, I think, is absolutely brilliant.
And well, whatever I can do to help.
Yeah, so thank you. Well, you can share this.
Yeah, will do.
And do that. And so thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
If people wanted to get in touch with you, what would they do?
So the best way is just through startupstatus.co.
Okay.
That's .co. So just reach out to me, and keep in touch.
That. Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We will be back next week. Share Chad's story. If you are interested and you're involved in a hub or an entrepreneur or any of those things, jump onto Chad's website. You'll get to see the car. It's very beautiful, and I might take some photos and put them on social media as well. So thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Honestly, sometimes the words just go bleh.